Time to go live in the United Kingdom, state-controlled Britain. Yes, where it's a two-tier system, sadly, when it comes to law and justice. And also we've had these local elections, and Labour, who are currently the people in power, everyone said, we don't really like you anymore. Anyway, I'm lucky to have the UK, maybe the world's top nutritionist with me, Richard Smith. Hi, Richard.
Stephen, pleasure as always, my man. How's your day?
It's been really good. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. Yes, people that know I'm a Liverpool fan, they lost today, but it doesn't matter because we won the Premier League, so it doesn't matter. We changed our team. It was a weakened team, and it doesn't really matter anymore. So, right, we've got questions. Should we go straight for it, or do you have any news that you'd like to share with everybody?
No, nothing super important. We did a fantastic presentation last week, didn't we, in our Skool Group, which
Yes.
which went down really well. So these are the additional benefits I think that we find for the members within the Skool Group. Yeah, I think it went down really well, surprisingly, considering it's something that we put together last minute. But yeah, we'll pop the link for the Skool Group below, and anybody interested can check that out.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, we've got a question because we were just discussing whether we should do an extra one on Thursday in the Skool Group or one night. And it is about, yes, thank you, Andrea. Fantastic presentation on cortisol, absolutely. And it's from MJ. Rich, I follow lots of your advice, MTOR, etc., but still struggling to not eat after training. Gains. I'm low body fat and train 8 a.m. Carney, nearly 4 years, 54-year-old male.
Fantastic, and looking in incredible shape. Looking at that picture, also, MJ, it's fantastic. Look, so it doesn't mean that you can't eat after training directly. It just means that if you can't continue to reach the other mTOR activations, we may miss an mTOR activation. But training will elicit an mTOR response. If you eat, you're further prolonging that mTOR response, which basically means that the second activation, which is going to be meal 1, the third and the fourth, are going to be knocked a little bit further down the line, and it may inhibit your ability to get that third meal in for that fourth mTOR activation. But there's no problem if you feel like you need to eat, then do it. But it's not going to allow you to build muscle anymore, and that's a fact. It's we have all of the machinery, if you like, within our body. When we consume food, it's there for a number of days. We're not devoid of proteins just because we're not eating it in that certain window. And the anabolic window is a myth. The anabolic window, having to consume a meal within a specific period of time after a workout, is a myth. You can leave it probably all day and still elicit the same response. But the idea behind the mTOR activations is that we are bouncing off the mTOR activation and reset and eliciting more responses rather than one long prolonged activation, which can be detrimental. And this is one of the reasons I think that many of the carb athletes will suffer further downstream deleterious effects later in life from prolonged periods of mTOR activation. mTOR has been linked in many studies to tumor and cancer growth. This isn't necessarily true in regards to animal proteins, because the animal protein activation is a natural activation. And again, because it's activated directly, and not via a cascade of events, which is what happens when we consume carbs. So a carb activation and insulin activation of mTOR will elicit an mTOR activation via a cascade of events, and it will lead to a prolonged activation, which lasts a long period of time. But the mTOR activation with just protein is up and down, and it's typically 3.5 to 4 hours. So it's the mTOR activation on carbohydrates and insulin seems to get the negative rap, but I don't believe that it's protein that has done this. There's other things going on in the background in regards to insulin, prolonged insulin, carbohydrates, and the extended activation. But MJ, if you feel like you need to consume food after eating, by all means do that, but it's not necessary. If you can go without, then it just means that the meal one, which is going to be the second mTOR activation, is going to be a little bit closer to the first, which basically means that we can have the fasted state or the activation of AMPK for longer through the night, and that will help balance everything out, because then there's a balance there between AMPK and mTOR activation.
Brilliant stuff. Yes, a few people were saying. Well, let's just quickly talk about Skool there. So Gary's level 7, the level 7 presentation on Skool on histamines was great too. That's really good. And Phil Richardson is saying he's missed it. Well, it was such a good presentation. We put it on YouTube, so you can get it on Richard's channel or mine channel. Make sure you hit a like and a subscribe when you do. But it is also on a playback in the Skool Group. So let's go to the next question, which is from Vinman. I know someone called Vin, but that's not Vinman right now. Right. After transitioning from vegan, well done. You saw the light, to keto carnivore and losing 30 pounds. I've hit a wall with blood glucose around 110 and my heels hurt. Okay.
Yeah, so fantastic. It's great news that you've managed to do that transition. You know, contrary to popular belief, vegan lifestyles are not healthy long term. So the fact you've made that transition, it's fantastic news. And I left a comment on a post recently in regards to a negative comment from a vegan. And look, I work with vegans. I work with everybody. I just believe that many are misinformed. And I one of the comments that I put on is that a true vegan is a carnivore, because I know I'm digressing slightly a second, but this I think is pretty good. You know, the 3 reasons that one becomes a vegan is the same reason that a person eventually becomes a carnivore: animal cruelty, the health of the planet, and personal health. And those are the 3 main reasons, and those are the 3 main reasons why I'm carnivore. Carnivore lifestyle, particularly from a lion sort of based lifestyle where we consume just grass-fed beef and lamb. This can result in as little as 1 animal death each year, compared to a minimum of 21 for a vegan. So even if you are a vegan consuming just plant compounds and being super strict, you know, you are contributing to at least 21 animal deaths each year. So a true vegan is a carnivore. So congratulations on that. So you've hit the wall with blood glucose. Blood glucose 110 in American. What's that in UK, Steve? That's 5 point something, I think, is it?
Yeah,
So
yeah, about 6. Really. Yeah, about 6.
Okay. So I mean, it's 6, possibly a little bit higher. But Stephen and I were talking about this recently in regards to blood glucose in many carnivores who have been carnivore for a long time. I don't know how long you've been carnivore, Vidman, but it's common to see an increase in blood glucose over time for a number of reasons. The red blood cells live longer, and as Steve pointed out to me when we were discussing this, that much of the blood glucose absorption in the cells happens via diffusion and not via the GLUT4, which basically means that we have slightly higher levels of blood glucose, which isn't a problem. At least I don't believe it to be. 30 pounds down, fantastic. Are you looking to lose any more would be the next question. If you are, then the lever that we can pull there ultimately is probably looking at the fat consumption. Now the insulin action from the protein is what drives the fatty acids into the fat cell, because it's insulin that stores fat. We can't store fat without insulin. So if you were to just eat fat on its own, you wouldn't gain any weight. But that said, protein is the most important macronutrient, so we need to make sure that we are obtaining and consuming adequate amounts of protein. And again, just to reiterate, the lowest end that we need for survival is around 0.5 grams per pound, 0.82 grams per pound in order to heal, build, and repair. But Stephen and I usually recommend around 1 gram per pound as a ballpark figure. Should you be hitting this and consuming lots of fatty cuts of food, fantastic. One of the things you can look at to lose weight is to maybe remove fats from cooking, or to remove or restrict dairy. Dairy plays a big part. It's highly addictive. The casein within contains a compound called caseomorphine, which is highly addictive. It has morphine-like properties. And this is why you can't just eat a small piece of cheese, for example, or just drink a tiny piece of, a small piece of milk. So those would be the first levers to pull. Remove fats from cooking and maybe potentially look at dairy and cheese. The heels hurt. I mean, are your heels hurting because you've lost so much body fat? And I know this sounds stupid, but when I was competing at that level, it used to hurt when I sat down because I had so little body fat on my bum. It would hurt. And this is a common thing with bodybuilders when they cut. It's anybody who's listening who's cut for a competition or lost weight incredibly quickly can attest to this. So it may just be, man, that the inflammation has gone from the feet, which is very common, especially when we consume plant compounds. So maybe the inflammation's gone down and it's just a sensation that the feet are not used to. Beyond that, it could be an electrolyte imbalance, but we wouldn't know without having to go into more details. And there could be other contributing factors. Are your heels hurting because your feet are puffy? Are your hands puffy? If that's the case, we could be looking at some form of kidney damage, which I don't believe is through the transition, but it could be a pre-existing condition from the vegan lifestyle. Lots of questions to go out there. So look, if pop the questions into the chat or look up Stephen or myself and potentially think of maybe booking a one-to-one consultation, because we can really get into the weeds. There's lots more information required, I think, to give a confident answer moving forward.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So 6.1 millimoles is what that relates to, 110 milligrams. But just to put your mind at rest, 80 milligrams per deciliter. Most people want to be under 100, but let's go to 80. The difference between 80 milligrams per deciliter and 110 is not even a teaspoon. It's not even half a teaspoon. It's like 0.375 of a teaspoon. So a third of a teaspoon extra sugar in your blood with 5.5 liters of blood. So it isn't that big. But I would say Cole Robinson, I think his name is, the guy that shouts and says, "Hello, fatty." He was absolutely complaining about Sean Baker's bloods because they're in the high 80s or 90s. And you're actually saying, that man's on a high sugar diet. He's running on sugar. Basically doesn't understand the physiology whatsoever of the human body. But interestingly, I'm just going to very quickly share this for people. It's an influencer who eats 90% carbohydrate. And this was her bloods. Nutrition with Victoria, or Nutrition by Victoria. If you want to know, does sugar cause you problems? Well, look at this. HDL cholesterol was low, 38 milligrams per deciliter. 90% sugar is her diet. And her triglycerides are 229 milligrams per deciliter. And the normal value is 150 milligrams per deciliter. So this pretty much proves that if you eat sugar, it just gets converted to triglycerides once your body has absorbed the carbohydrate into the muscle, into the liver. Where does it go? It gets turned into fat. I mean, that's pretty categoric, and she's been doing that for a long time. And I think these influencers just don't understand that the physiology is the body runs on glucose and ketones. That's it. And it picks. The body knows what to do, and it will choose what it wants to use, how much glucose, how much ketones. The other thing is, if the concentration of ketones is about a third of the concentration of glucose, comparatively speaking, then it will pick up using ketones more than glucose. But there's nothing wrong with having some blood glucose. That's the point. There are cells in the body that will use glucose, and because we are sadly eating the wrong way for so long, when we come to carnivore, we're not adapting to that. We're actually going back to what we should be eating like, if you see my sense there, rather than saying I'm not adapted or, we need to fat adapt. No, we need to get back to where we should be. So what we're doing when we come to this way of eating is we're leaving behind the thing that we adapted to. Way too many carbohydrates basically being that. Super sticker from Melissa. Thank you very much. That's $5. We obviously will do the super chats first. I think we've got a new member as well. Hugo, thank you very much. Thank you both for the great content. Oh, member for 9 months, which is really nice that you popped in and supported us for so long. Let me just get to the next paid question, which is Milkman. I understand the concept of a slow transition to zero carb, but how important is it really? I've been eating at most 150 grams of carbs per day for a year. I'm suffering and not really wanting to wait many weeks. Thank you very much. Richard, you do so much work. I'll just give a little bit of a preamble so you can think about your answer. But it does depend on what sort of person you are. And that message, what's pouring out of you is you really want to change. Now, if you're one of those people that's given up smoking and you did it like that and you were able to do it, or you gave up drinking and did it like that, then you might be somebody that absolutely benefits from just diving straight in. But if you transition slowly, well, it doesn't have to be, long drawn out 6 month process. Week by week, you cut down your carbohydrates. It really does depend on your personality. I'm definitely an all or nothing sort of person. If I want to stop something, I'll just stop it, and that's it. So I'll let Richard now have his two penneth.
My two penneth. Yeah, brilliant answer, Steve. Look, it's the reason that Stephen and I usually recommend a slow transition is more to do with the gut microbiome. If we've been consuming carbohydrates and plant compounds for prolonged periods of time, the gut microbes are geared up to processing that for fuel and energy. And if we were to stop in one hit, suddenly we are consuming lots of animal proteins and natural fats, and the gut microbes that are there to process these within the body are not geared up efficiently enough to process this. So you may experience a number of problems. The gut microbes that are the carbohydrate loving microbes will go through a process of die-off, which will lead to gastro distress and toilet problems. It can lead to feeling incredibly fatigued, all sorts of things. You can suffer with a multitude of reactions by jumping in too quick and not transitioning from reducing the carbohydrates slowly. Now, that said, I know lots of clients and customers of mine who have just gone cold turkey and they do incredibly well. I do believe that they have a harder time in that initial phase, but it's done a lot quicker. So they've gone cold turkey. They struggle for a few days. So usually it takes a couple of days off work, electrolyte supplementation to offset the loss of sodium, for example. And you will go through a period of gastro distress because of the die-off. So it's a slow transition to allow the gut microbiome to adapt and increase the bacteroidetes as the firmicutes reduces. I think is more beneficial. You seem to see less side effects, and for many, it seems to be more sustainable. What I find with some people who jump straight into the deep end, it seems to be too drastic, and they love it in the beginning because they're now consuming all of the crispy chicken skin and the fat on the pork and the beef and everything that we all love and enjoy, and the things that we're told that we can't consume. But after a number of days of doing this, with the higher fat content and the fact that the gut microbes are dying off, it leads to severe gastro distress, which now means that not only are you suffering with toilet problems, but incredibly high lethargy and fatigue and brain fog, and it's just not a nice place to be. So that's the reason that we recommend. I think it's safer to do a transition. I do think a couple of months towards maybe, and it does depend how damaged your body is and how what your carbohydrate consumption is prior to this. You're saying 150. That doesn't seem excessive. I mean, that's quite low for a normal diet. I think 150 grams per day. So I should imagine, Milkman, that you can transition a lot quicker, but maybe just do it over a couple of weeks, and by that, I mean, you can just predominate the animal proteins and natural fats on your plate. So any carb that you were using prior to this, just consume a lot less. Make it 1/4 of the size of your plate physically and build the rest up with animal proteins. I think the biggest transition, the biggest levers that we can pull are the removal of the grains. And whether you're ketogenic, low carb, vegan, or carnivore or other, I think removing the grains and the seed oils are the two biggest contributing factors to health and well-being that anybody can make. Beyond that, it would be increasing animal proteins and natural fats, equally as important, I think. But, irrespective of labeling a diet, a keto diet or carnivore, let's look at health. And the two biggest levers we can pull are the removal of the grains and the seed oils. And by default, by removing the grains, we're lowering the carbohydrate generally anyway. But look, I think for you, being low carb, a shorter transition would probably be okay. But I would still recommend some form of transition. There are a number of people that I would recommend jump straight in, but these are few and far between, depending on severe detrimental existing conditions. If you're able-bodied and generally fit and healthy, then I think a transition would be better.
I'm muted. Sorry about that.
Excellent
answer, Richard. Just to explain to people, we do your questions in date, time, order, but we prioritize the super chats because they help the channel, which is really great. So they jump the queue a little bit. Please be patient. Richard and I give full answers. We don't just say, go and look at this video we made. So if you aren't asked a question at 7:10 and it's now 20 past, we haven't got to it, we can see it. I promise you, and we try to get to everybody. Lawrence has done a super chat of $4.99. Appreciate your wisdom. A question for Richard. Lawrence is a 33-year-old male. He used to get migraine-related blindness, gone now on low carb. Do you know why that happens? Never found a cause. I mean, Richard, this is very close to your heart. I mean, my best guess would be the reduction in systemic inflammation, elimination of triggers, because there might have been some dietary triggers. And of course, when you go to the carnivore way of eating, it is an elimination type diet. So as Richard personally has experienced, and I'll let him come on because he's actually experienced it, he used to get migraine related blindness, and that has completely gone. But that would be my two best things. Maybe the stabilization of blood sugar has a little bit to do with it, mitochondrial function, vascular function, all of those things. But yeah, Richard, what do you think?
100%. Look, it's. I think it's a combination of all of the factors you just mentioned. I think inflammation is certainly a big thing. The excessive amounts of carbohydrate, increase in blood glucose levels, and being in that what we call an insulin resistant range. The grains were a huge factor for me. Grains in the form of wheat germ agglutinin have been known to travel the vagus nerve through the gut mind connection, and we see this because it's one of the contributing factors for things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and it can cause neurotransmission interference. So I believe grains are a huge contributing factor. Excessive amounts of calcium, that was another contributing factor for me. Lack of quality nutrition, especially in the form of electrolytes. Calcium's a big one, a huge one for me. Seed oils, again, I think probably to do with the inflammation, but I think you've nailed it, Steve. I think it's a combination of all these things. There are many triggers for me, many triggers. Coffee is a huge trigger for me, and I haven't told you this yet, actually, but do you know, I quit coffee going back mid last year. In fact, we initially started quitting the same time, didn't we, Steve? Yeah. So huge results in muscular function, because the acrylamide causes issues there. Talk for another day. But anyway, I indulged in a cup of coffee recently. I thought, I like coffee. I haven't had one for ages. Acrylamide is accumulative, so I'm probably acrylamide free. So I had a coffee. A few hours later, hit with a migraine. First migraine that I'd had since I'd quit the coffee previously. So I know, and it's not the caffeine, because I consume caffeine from other sources with no problem at all. And the difference there, I think, is coffee contains a whole host, hundreds of phytoalexins, plant toxins, mycotoxins, so on and so forth. And I think all of these combined are a huge contributing factor. And these are things that are found in many things, by the way. So yeah, I think, Steve, you've hit the nail on the head there. It's a multitude of contributing factors. But again, it's a case of removing these sodium, potassium, spot on, yeah. And again, something that we are devoid of a lot on a standard diet, especially in the correct ratio, because sodium is retained, potassium is lost, and we need both. And if we look as nature intended, if we look at a piece of beef or lamb or organ meats, for example, the potassium sits around 4 times higher than the potassium. And if we increase the sodium, which is what happens when we are in an insulin-resistant state, then this causes the sodium to be reabsorbed from the 4 points in the nephrons in the kidneys. And this sodium, got to get that in. And then, and when this happens, the sodium depletes the potassium, and everything else is out of whack. And calcium also depletes magnesium, and magnesium is required for the reabsorption of the potassium. So this also tips everything else out of whack. So I think keto carnivore lifestyles for the win, especially when it comes to migraines.
Excellent. Yes. A super chat of €20. Thank you, John. Hello, what's your opinion on this sugar diet fast that is going around now? Just surprised me how much people are having success with this, especially for the thyroid. They see sugar in the absence of fat might help with insulin resistance. And there is another question as well that's related to that. So I'll sort of join that together. I just showed you the bloods of somebody that is doing 90% sugar, and their triglycerides are 229 milligrams per deciliter, and their HDL is very low if you're going to go by bloods. When you say especially for the thyroid, it might be because they don't understand how to read the levels of T3, because when you're low carb, you don't need anywhere near as much T3. Well, actually, I do know that everybody that's pushing this sugar diet doesn't understand physiology and bloods. It's really that simple. Cole Robinson, a big proponent of it, shouting his mouth off saying 80 to 90 milligrams per deciliter is high, saying that about Sean Baker, which is it's not high. It's absolutely not high. He's saying it's not a ketogenic diet if you've got that blood glucose. There is a question later on about their blood glucose being 4.9 millimoles and their ketones being about 1.4 or something. So he doesn't seem to understand anything. The sugar diet is devoid of enough protein and fats long term. So yeah, it literally is a fad diet, because this isn't the way we should be eating. They actually get fruit and add sugar to it, which is ridiculous. So if you look at fruit, there are many zoos around the world that are actually asking people not to give fruit to the animals because the animals are becoming diabetic. And when I started out as a specialist practitioner in diabetes and obesity, it was only 15 years ago, diabetes was still known most commonly as adult onset diabetes. It was still not that common only 15 years ago. And children really didn't get it. And now we're getting people getting the diabetes in their 20s, and children getting diabetes. Well, what's changed? Well, fats, animal fats, saturated fat has decreased, and sugars, seed oils possibly could be a culprit as well, have gone up and up and up. So yeah, going back to your question, yes, it could be successful for somebody in the short term. The reason it helps with insulin resistance, which is sort of a misnomer, it's more about cell protection, is that they're not eliciting the Randall cycle, which is the cross inhibition of fats and carbs when you have them together. Baby's milk is fat, carbs, and protein, and that is designed to make you bigger and grow. And it is mainly because you've got the mixture of carbohydrates and fats as well as protein, which in nature is really unusual. You either have loads of carbs or you have loads of fat, but fat comes with protein, especially in the animal world. So the cell knows how to protect you from the mixture of sugars and also fats. And that's what insulin resistance sort of is, really, to be honest. It's just the overplus of energy for the cell. It needs to protect itself, so it closes the door to any excess energy. So you will get some results if you just have protein and carbohydrate. And you will get results if you just have protein and fats. You'll definitely get some results. But what about long term? You see, there's essential proteins, essential amino acids, and essential fatty acids. There are no essential carbohydrates. So you're definitely making yourself deficient in protein. You're definitely making yourself deficient in essential fats. That's just a fact. So yeah, if you want to do it for 100 days and get ripped, well, there might be sort of hangover from that. Because how are you going to progress after that? What are you going to do? You're going to go back to eating proteins and fats, hopefully, and you will feel better. But I think you'll find your body will take a long time to recover from that. But yeah, it looks good. If someone does it, they do look good. But then again, if you look at people like Sean Baker or Keto Savage, you look at Richard, they look good, but they also get all the protein they need. They also get all the essential fats they need. So I think it's a little bit of a slippery slope. I will put the other question up because it kills two birds with one stone. They're both super chats, so I don't feel like we're shortchanging people. So this is from Andrea on the same thing. How can these YouTube bodybuilders be doing so well on sugar, claiming high energy, good blood work, but they don't have good blood work, by the way, still adding muscle, etc., when we know humans thrive on protein and fats and sugar? They thrive on protein and fat, and sugar is so harmful. So yeah. pass over to a pro bodybuilder.
Yeah, 100%. Look, and Steve, you've hit the nail on the head. We can consume sugars or fats. It's one or the other, and if we remove the fat, which is a typical bodybuilder diet, so it's lean proteins with carbohydrate, then they see big results. But once we start to co-consume these, as you say, we elicit the Randle cycle, and this forces the GLUT4 transporter to translocate to the surface. Or in fact, it translocates from the surface to protect the cell, and this is what things like metformin overcome. It forces this back to the surface. But we can do one or the other. So you're either carb and protein, or you're fat and protein. But as Stephen eloquently says, there's no requirement for carbohydrate, but there is a requirement for essential fatty acids. So why consume one over the other? Now, the bodybuilders, if we look at the average age of the American bodybuilder, for example, it's roughly 15 years less or 15 years lower than the average American. So I mean, that says it all. Now, many people would argue that is through the overconsumption and abuse of anabolic steroids, but I would argue that it's the overconsumption and abuse of sugar and lack of these fundamental fatty acids that we need for function and for survival. So this is why people will see results. But look at your pro athlete, your typical pro athlete in any arena. Once they hit their 30s, they're retiring or they're past their sell-by date. But if you look at a ketogenic or carnivore athlete, my goodness, I work with some in their 50s and in their 60s. One of the guys that I work with who works for a pro soccer team in the States, he's in his 50s. He outperforms all of the pro athletes in their 20s and 30s in their fitness tests by minutes. And he's carnivore. He can't say that he is, because if he says he is, it's instant dismissal. So he can't be seen consuming anything else other than the brand that sponsors the team. But he outperforms all the athletes, and he's in his 50s. So it's, the fact is that you and again, I'll use this analogy, I can paint my house with a toothbrush, or I can employ a professional painter to come in and do it for me. Both are going to result in a better looking house, but one is far more efficient, and one's probably going to last a lot longer. There's just because something works doesn't mean it's the best option. So proteins should always be consumed with fat, no carb requirement whatsoever. Our requirement for carbohydrate is quite literally zero, at least from an exogenous source.
Excellent. So people might want to know what I mean when I say Skool. If you've watched YouTube before, we do talk about it, but maybe you're new and you don't know what I mean by that. Well, Richard and myself run this little Skool community. It looks like this. And basically, you can post lots and lots of comments and have loads of answers. The great thing about it is, and people in the chat have been talking about the classroom, and some people are up to level 7. Well, the more active you are, the more levels you unlock. And so, you start with a free keto course if you want that. Then there's a carnivore course, how to start carnivore. Thing about thyroid there, where you'll learn all the things I said about T3, T4, free ebooks. Some of those from big name people. I'm not going to give them too much of a plug, but then we got Dairy as well with free ebooks and videos all about fruit and veg, the secrets that the food producers themselves use, like keeping an apple in storage for at least a year and pears for 8 months. That's right. When you buy it from a supermarket, that fresh fruit and veg is not fresh. And this is actual PDFs, and you can go to the links for the growers. There's a thing about protein, all the popular myths, absolutely busted. Problem solving, so a few people on level 7. When you get to level 8, one of my books is completely free. And then we've got Fat Club, which is an additional premium because it's a course that Richard and I have done with daily help for over 60 days. And we've also got the calendar there as well. So the calendar, as you can see, here we are, Ask Us Anything. We've also got a session at 8 p.m. tonight, which is in about 30 minutes. And if we don't get all the questions done, we will, try and answer questions over there if you want to join us. If you want to join us, there is a link in the description. So that's what we will do. We will be there. And then we've got another one tomorrow night, which is, of course, Bank Holiday Monday, but we will be doing it. And we'll probably do another one on Thursday. So if you want to join Skool, there's a link in the description there. Once you join, that price is for life. We've had 2 price increases. So the people that first joined, they were guaranteed that price for life. Then we put it up a little bit because we wanted to make sure that we didn't have too many people in there. Just control the numbers. And now, we've gone to our third price increase. I would definitely get in before it has to go up again because I think it's such good value. Right. Okay. Cruz, he has put a $10 super chat in. Currently taking 90 milligrams of elemental magnesium 308. I have also got 200 milligrams of K citrate, salt to taste. Prone to have cramps on muscles outside the shin bone when crouching down. Any ideas? Carnivore, 95%. Thanks.
Yeah, brilliant question. Look, cramps are usually a sign of excessive calcium or not enough magnesium. So I would be curious to know if you are consuming eggs or dairy or cheese, which are quite common. I for full disclosure, I consume eggs, I consume cheese. I love my eggs and cheese. I no longer consume any form of dairy, as in milk, not even raw milk, but I do love my eggs. But I need to be mindful on how many I consume. So I tend to alternate them. If I have some eggs one day or I have 2 days without eggs, I'll tend to do a few days without them. So take a look at your calcium consumption. If you're supplementing with any form of calcium, then definitely stop that. But look at your egg consumption, cheese and dairy. So it's usually to do with excessive amounts of calcium. And we can offset this by lowering the calcium or by increasing the magnesium, because that's how nature provides it to us. If we look at a piece of beef or lamb or organ meats, for example, the ratio is roughly 1-to-1, and this is how it works within the cell. So I'd take a look at that. Again, there are other contributing factors in regards to sodium potassium ratios, but generally, if you're consuming or living a ketogenic carnivore-based lifestyle and salt into taste, then this shouldn't be so much of a problem unless you're consuming too much salt. But that generally doesn't tend to happen if you're doing it to taste. And this is why I always say to people to salt to taste and not just to put the salt on, because too much sodium can deplete the potassium, and this can potentially cause problems with electrolyte balances as well. But take a look at those and report back into the chat if you can, Cruz. It'd be interesting to see if you do have a high calcium content within your diet.
Yes, thank you very much, Cruz. A big supporter. And it's really nice that people keep doing this, that keep supporting us. So thank you for all the super chats. I noticed we had a couple of other ones. Herbert did a super chat, and then apparently his bank said it was suspicious. We do suffer with big tech and all of the sort of institutions trying to shut us down. So it is worth mentioning. If you think you're subscribed and you think that you've got notifications buzzed, can you just double check that, whether you're on Richard's channel or myself, because they're absolutely getting rid of comments, getting rid of subs for us. It's quite frustrating and upsetting. So anyway, Benny Weber, 199 super sticker, absolutely appreciated. So Herbert, thank you for that attempt at a €5 super chat. I don't know what's happened, why your bank has bounced that back. I do apologize. We have no control over that sort of thing. Let's get to the next super chat, which is way down here. Lots and lots of questions. John, €5. Thank you very much for the explanation. I knew I was in the right place for answers. Wishing you all the best. Thank you, John. Really nice that you've followed up with the answer with another super chat. That's really very, very kind of you. I think we caught up with all the super chats, so we can now go to questions in the order that they were posted. We've done the heels hurting one. So we've got Melissa next. Melissa Willis, and she is talking about, let me just get this onto the screen, Daniel Pomper's program, which is, this is the question. Have you heard of Daniel Pomper? Yes, and his Pomper program. Cellular Detox Doctor talks about T4 to T3 not converting, which is it is possible, but on this diet, what I see is many people think that's happening, but actually low levels of T3 are absolutely normal and indicated on this way of eating, because you need a lot of T3 to take pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane, which is basically saying glycolysis or carbohydrate metabolism. So you don't need so much T3. But we'll get into this pituitary problem and or hormones not getting into our cells. So we talked about pituitary gland problems. Do Do you know this program, Richard? But if not, do you want to just talk about the pituitary problems that are alleged from this way of eating?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I'm not familiar with Daniel Pompa or the Pompa program. But look, T4 to T3 conversion can be a condition and an effect of pituitary damage. But it's not something that tends to happen on carnivore. In fact, it's the opposite on carnivore. We tend to see a recovery of pituitary damage. What we may see lack of T4 converted into T3 on a high veg diet is because of beta carotene. So beta carotene, which we are told is vitamin A, is not vitamin A. And we require a number of enzymes to convert beta carotene into its active form of retinol. Retinol, which is readily found in animal proteins, by the way, but it costs the body T4 to convert this beta carotene into the active form of retinol. And then whatever retinol is converted, which is less than 20 times of the volume of the beta carotene, by the way. So if you consume this much so-called vitamin A from a plant, which is not vitamin A, you're left with this, hardly any. And it's cost the body T4, leaving less T4 available to convert into T3. Basically, what I'm saying is overconsumption of vegetables can cause T4 to T3 conversion problems. Now, we're also left with low levels of retinol, which is true vitamin A, which now is required to convert the T4 into T3, but it's a very low amount. So now we're left with very low amounts of retinol in order to carry out this process, of which we find in abundance in animal proteins. So the key to this is reduce your vegetables and consume more animal proteins. But pituitary, if the pituitary is damaged, everything downstream is affected, not just T4, T3, everything downstream from estrogen, testosterone, triglycerides, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, everything you can think of is affected. Cortisol, adrenals, all sorts are affected because the adrenals, which are made up of two parts, the adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis, control almost everything that happens within the body. And it's a whole host of stuff. Pituitary damage is generally recovered and repaired when we gravitate into a carnivore-based lifestyle. And look, if you want more information on how to do this, Melissa, it is a conversation that we covered in the Skool Group last Thursday, I believe. But we have released it on both YouTube channels as a presentation. So if you want to know more about how to improve your pituitary and heal your HPA axis, check out that video that is available on both channels.
Excellent. There is a couple of other super chats, which is really nice, guys. Thank you so much. I will get to them. The thing is, StreamYard puts all the messages from all different places all in one. So I literally have hundreds to go through. We've got 213 people watching live at the moment and lots of questions. So I'm just scrolling through. I don't want to miss any. So there's a super sticker from Liv, NOK59. So I'm not sure what that currency is, but that's always appreciated. Thank you so much. We've got Lawrence again. Thanks, Rich and Stephen. Very useful info. You've given me peace of mind. Read the migraines. Grains. Love your electrolytes. How do you get bloods tested in the UK, Lawrence? I put a link in the description so you can see that. I've done 2 links actually. And Gazamongo 1, a £5 super chat. No question, just a big thanks for, that sounded very common. Just a big thanks for over a year steering me right. That's great. Thank you.
And do you know what? Credit to Gaza, because he has encountered all sorts of issues along the way, but he's persevered, continued, and kept on crushing forward. So all the respect in the world for Gaza. Big supporter of the channel and the Skool Group. So credit to you also, and thank you so much for all of the kind support. Keep pushing forward, man.
Yeah, it's good. And the humor as well in the Skool Group, which is always appreciated. Papa Carnivore, which of any fruits and or vegetables do you feel are acceptable to consume on Keto Carnivore? Well, all of them. If there's no rules here. If you thrive on something, then why take it out? Right, okay. But how do you know you're thriving? This is where this elimination part comes in. Because if you think you're doing really well and you're having potatoes and you're having avocados and you're having kale, well, you'll only know how good you feel when you take it out. And that's what I would do. I would do 30 to 60 days without any fruit and veg, and then add back in what you think is really good or you miss. If you do miss it, I mean, after 60 days, I don't think you miss any, because that's what happened to me. I went from keto to carnivore when I was 55, all years ago, nearly 6 years. I am 61 on the 25th of this month. So, nearly 6 years carnivore. And I used to think that I would miss the fruit and veg. I used to think I enjoyed the fruit and veg, but within 60 days, it was like, don't miss any of them, and I feel so much better. Richard will probably have a slightly different answer, because I know that he has his website, which has sort of green lights for the best things and amber lights. But anyway, so that's my answer. But I don't want anyone to say, well, I like an avocado every Saturday morning. I just sort of miss it, and I think it's really great. Fill your boots if you think that's fine. But I don't think you'll know how truly well and great you'll feel without completely eliminating them for a bit and seeing what happens. But anyway, Richard, what do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I've just put a screen to share, Steve. I don't know if you've got that at your end to put onto the big screen.
Oh yeah, let's do it. Yeah, add it to the stage. There it goes. Is that
perfect? This is a shopping list that is available on my website. It's free, and if you subscribe to the newsletter, you can download and print it out as a PDF. So, for full disclosure, I'm carnivore. I don't eat any form of fruits and vegetables, but my journey has been achieved via incremental changes. So I've gravitated over many years to becoming strict carnivore. And again, this is what works best for me. This is what we mentioned in one of the earlier questions. So for those who are on the call who are more low carb, ketogenic, and you're still carnivore if you eat vegetables, by the way, because it's to do with the percentage of caloric value. We did consume vegetables or plant compounds through our evolutionary period, but they were nothing more than survival foods. And they are very different today compared to what they once were. So what we see in the supermarket today does not resemble real fruit and veg. But again, if you are gravitating slowly or you do feel like you want to consume something, this is a traffic light system. Green, amber, and red. Greens are what I call Keto Pro approved. So again, this is approved for more of a ketogenic lifestyle. These are going to be the least toxic. Meats, as you can see, all of those are green. The only ones that are not green are things like burgers, corned beef, and stuff. And this is because they contain rusk and fillers. And we've got a similar type of thing on the fruits and veg. So things like avocado or cucumber, they tend to be less damaging. And we've got a couple of other things up here that are green. But then we've highlighted things like bell peppers and cauliflower and green beans and almond butter and spinach because they are very high in things like oxalates and lectins, which may be more problematic. But I've just posted that link into the comments. So if you are looking to consume or incorporate some form of fruits and veg within your diet, take a look at that, and you'll find the most appropriate fruits and veg to consume.
Brilliant. I think that's a great resource, actually. Let's have a look at the next thing, which is
it probably needs updating. To be honest, it does need a bit of an update, but it's close enough.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It does need updating. Right, I think it's brilliant. Anyway, let's get back to this question. Michael, have you ever heard of people curing their TMD, TMJ with an elimination diet? Yes, I have definitely heard of that. Temporal mandibular joint disorders, which is the joint, the temporal lobes. The reason they're called the temporal lobes, by the way, because as we know, if we know our Shakespeare, that when we talk about temporal shifts, we talk about time. And I have got the perfect example of why we use this phrase, because look at my grey bits here. That's my sign of age, my temporal shift. Anyway, right, just teaching a little bit of English here. I have an honours degree in English literature as well as in science. So, yes, I definitely have heard of that, because again, I think we always go back to systemic inflammation being one of the benefits. Definitely, I've heard of that. I would have to say I haven't got anyone personally that I've had to coach through that, but I've definitely had people tell me about it. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think it's to do with the inflammation. Once we remove these toxic compounds and address this inflammation, then many issues seem to be alleviated, massively improved, or completely resolved. So Yeah, I would, and by elimination, you know, what I would do is do this, as we said, via incremental changes. But if you are primarily carnivore and you are completely fruit and veg free, then what I would recommend beyond this is to go to Lion, which is grass-fed beef and lamb, and then introduce things back in, because what we tend to do when we're already carnivore, if we suspect that we may have some sort of allergy to shellfish or to pork or chicken, we just remove one, and then we tend to increase the others. But there are a considerable amount of compounds within even the carnivore community which may be problematic. So the best thing to do is to remove them all and introduce slowly. Eggs can be problematic for some people. Coffee, you know, we've got chicken, pork, fish in general, shellfish. So there's a whole host of stuff. Cheese, you know, things that are deemed to be carnivore that may be still causing a problem. So that's what I'd suggest. If you're not carnivore, increment slowly towards carnivore, and that will probably alleviate most of the symptoms. If you're still suffering beyond this, go to just grass-fed beef and lamb, salt and water, and then reintroduce. Once you've seen a resolution, introduce things one at a time and see where you are.
Yes, I'm just going to say in front of everybody, it's a pleasure to sit with you every single week, Richard, because you're just you're a font of knowledge. You're absolutely brilliant.
And likewise.
Right. Okay.
Likewise.
Well, thank you very much. Right. Jill or Gil, I don't know how we pronounce that. I'm thinking Jill. Hi, Stephen and Richard. What's our thoughts on kefir, or kefir, as they say in America? I'm still struggling to quit coffee. I make chocolate kefir with Richard's chocolate MCT powder. Also, our vanilla essence. Are vanilla essence bad? I put them on egg pudding. Unless there is a thing called KEFA, which is different to kefir. But I'm thinking you're talking about the fermented milk drink. That's what I'm thinking, where you add grains and you know, a culture of lactic acid bacteria and yeast. That's what that is. But do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, look, I think it's, if we are consuming anything, you know, such as milk or even plant compounds for that matter, fermented is always going to be more beneficial. I think it has its place, especially during the transition. It's not something I would use now, but it's certainly it's something that I've used previously and during my transition, and it's helped. So again, look, we're all on our own journey. This is a series of incremental changes, step by step. And this is all about the rule and not the exception. So consistency is key. If this is what allows you to maintain the journey, then fantastic, you know, keep doing that. In regards to vanilla's problematic for me. It's one of the compounds that does cause a reaction and issues with my migraines, by the way. So circling back to the comment we had earlier. But if it does not seem to elicit a response with you, again, you know, there are far bigger levers to pull along your journey. And if this is what allows you to maintain it, then keep that in. The egg, fantastic. And again, obviously the MCT powder, which contains the cocoa powder. Cocoa does contain oxalate, but the amount of oxalate per serving is incredibly small and nowhere near enough to overexpress the glyoxylate pathway. So the chocolate MCT, I think, is a fantastic addition, especially if you're trying to come away from hot drinks. This is something I made for my daughter. My daughter was heavily addicted to hot chocolate, and a poor quality one. So I've made this. It's MCT. MCT from C8 converts into ketones, and ketones will elicit all of the responses just at a far lower level that we would achieve by living a ketogenic and carnivore-based lifestyle. So it's brain fuel, it's energy for the heart, the body, and so on and so forth. So it's and I indulge sometimes, especially in the evening. But on kefir, yeah, it has its place, and there are far worse things to be consuming.
Excellent. Kayla, thank you very much for the $499, and it's your 18-month carniversary, which is really good. Right, and somebody there saying they can't find the links to the bloods. Yeah, it is. It's great. Yes, somebody can't find the links that I just posted for the bloods, so I will get that sorted. I think that was Lawrence. I'll do it again for you, mate. So, right, hang on. Let's go back to questions. And
Kayla is a fantastic supporter within the Skool Group also. Another valued member of the Skool Group. So congratulations on 18 months, Kayla. Super impressed. Keep up the awesome work.
Yes. Yeah, and really good like you say, contributor, and always add some excellent comments for people that are struggling. She's very good person to go to. Right, I'm going to ask the question, and then I will put the bloods link in the description. Right, here we go. So Jersey Mike, the liver produces 80% cholesterol on a daily basis, which is absolutely true. And by the way, the brain produces its own cholesterol, if you're wondering, because of the blood-brain barrier. The brain does that itself. That's how important cholesterol is. Anyway, the liver produces 80% cholesterol on a daily basis. So if I eat foods with more than 30 to 40% cholesterol, I would expect, would the liver produce less cholesterol to compensate, or is it overkill? Thank you.
Yep, it would produce less. So it's the more cholesterol we consume, the less. But the body keeps a tight regulation on cholesterol production. So it's and cholesterol. For full disclosure, if you understand what makes cholesterol, you will also understand the sugar can make cholesterol. So this whole hypothesis about fats causing cardiovascular disease because increased cholesterol is a load of rubbish. Via the HMG-CoA pathway, we can use fatty acids, or we can use sugar via acetyl-CoA on both parts. So yes, is the answer, Jersey Mike. If we consume cholesterol-rich foods, the body will just make less. But cholesterol is essential. It makes every cell within the body, and it's essential for a number of functions within the body, which are essential for life. Now, what we tend to see with people who consume things like vegetable oils, seed oils, which are high in an oxidized omega-6 called linoleic acid, these look so close to human cholesterol that the body stops making cholesterol because it thinks that we're consuming it from the food. So when we consume the vegetable oils, the body makes less because it sees that we have enough, and it lowers the amount. This is why when somebody becomes ketogenic and carnivore, we see what we believe to be an increase in cholesterol. It's not because the body's increasing, it's because now the body is returning back to a natural physiological level. It's returning back to the state where it should be before we consume these foods or non-foods even that contain these toxic seed oils. Now, whether you cook in vegetable oil, sunflower oil, rapeseed, grapeseed, so on and so forth, or not, if you venture to the supermarket and indulge in any cake or biscuit, or even if you consume fast foods or eat out regularly, you are more than likely consuming lots and lots of these oxidized omega-6s, which will lower your cholesterol, which is not a good thing. And we know this via a condition called cytosterolemia, which shows that the overconsumption or the body's inability even to remove these phytosterols and plant stenols leads to early cardiovascular disease and increased risk of heart problems. So these things are not good for us. Consume cholesterol-rich foods. Don't worry about your saturated fats. The only thing we need to worry about is excessive amounts of carbohydrates, grains, and seed oils.
Excellent.
How's that for a
Mama
soundbite?
Bear. That's a good soundbite. Yes, a real in the making there. Mama Bear, is it possible to get adequate calcium on carnivore without dairy? I cannot tolerate dairy. I try to eat sardines, but I have to force them down. Thanks.
100%. Yeah, look, again, the calcium is essential. So for anyone who is an avid listener will know that I moan about excessive amounts of calcium. Calcium is one of 6 compounds that makes up every cell in the body. So it is essential, but we don't want to overconsume. The beauty with animal proteins is animal proteins contain every single vitamin and mineral that we need, not just to survive, but thrive. Any form of animal protein will contain almost everything that you need, particularly red meat. For example, beef and lamb contains enough calcium. And again, coming back to that ratio, potassium, sodium, magnesium, and calcium. We obtain everything that we need from animal proteins. No need to consume dairy, no need to consume eggs, no need to supplement with calcium. Everything you need is found in the animal proteins.
Yes. If someone was, just a very quick question, if someone was having difficulty sleeping, Richard, after 5 weeks of recovery from a broken rib, have you got any suggestions on how they could sleep a bit more peacefully? We've only got like 30 seconds.
So it's struggling to sleep with the pain, or is it?
Yeah, I think with the pain, yes.
So I mean, look, there are a few herbal remedies which we can look into. If this is a client of yours, we can chat about it, off this. But mag-glycinate, it will help with sleep. But that's not going to address any pain, for example. we can look at anti-inflammatories if it's inflammation that's causing an issue. BHB MCT may be beneficial, or we can go further downstream and look at other forms of natural anti-inflammatories, or even medication, for example. But it's like, I think living the lifestyle, being as clean as we can with this, is always the best. Recovering from broken ribs, sleep is again, there could be a number of contributing factors. Mag glycinate is something that can help extensively with sleep, but again, it's I'm sorry to hear that you've got the broken ribs. 5 weeks, I should imagine that you're nearly there. It's keep those animal proteins and natural fats high, and this will allow you to heal and repair as quickly as possible. But we'll if you're interested in any form of medication or herbal remedy, David, we'll mention it on the next live, or if you are a member in the Skool Group, maybe we can discuss it in there in a little bit more detail.
Okay, brilliant. Now that's the end, YouTubers. We're going to go over to the infamous Skool Group now, and I've put the link in the chat if you want to join us. If you don't want to join us and you've just enjoyed this hour, thank you so much for attending, and we'll see you again next week on Sunday in the UK at 7 p.m. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.